I was diagnosed when I was 7 years old. I had both a brain tumor and leukemia at the same time, and so it was incredibly rare. I wanted to make something positive out of my cancer experience. I didn't want to live in fear of having had cancer.
You went through the struggles too, but can you tell me a little bit about how it is, like, as a nurse to, like, deal with patients? Hola, hola! Welcome to Pasos de Esperanza podcast, the podcast where we take steps of hope to win the race against cancer. Today we have a super special guest, LeighAnn. LeighAnn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, LeighAnn was actually one of my nurses when I was at MD Anderson, so that's how we met.
Yes.
And well, LeighAnn was like my favorite nurse and a super special nurse because when me and my mom first got to Houston, we were completely lost in the hospital. We didn't even know where to go or anything. And LeighAnn was actually one of the first nurses we met. And you know, when you're sitting in a room and like doctors come in and they start telling you, well, your hair's gonna fall, you're gonna get fat, you might get pimples. They tell you everything, and you're about to like start a journey of chemo that's gonna last like 3 years. It can be totally overwhelming, but LeighAnn made that process a lot better. I actually remember that when we were in my room, my doctor, I had like really long hair, and my doctor, Dr. Nunez, which I think was also your doctor.
He was a fellow. Yeah.
Yeah. My doctor came in and he was like, well, Mariana, I think you should cut your hair a little bit so like the shock isn't as bad when you become like bald, because I had like really long hair. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to feel about that. And it was COVID, so my mom was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, my mom was super positive through it all. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. But we tried to find places, but of course we couldn't go out of the hospital. And I know at the MD Anderson, there was like a haircut place, but it was closed because of COVID. So LeighAnn was like, oh, I'll bring my scissors and I'll cut it. And she literally came into the room and I sat there like at a beauty salon and LeighAnn cut my hair. And oh my God, I don't have words to thank you for all of that. She was my favorite nurse. But actually LeighAnn also had cancer when she was younger. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Tell me about your story.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed when I was 7 years old. I had both a brain tumor and leukemia at the same time, and so it was incredibly rare. And growing up down here in this area, we were so fortunate to have MD Anderson in our backyard, and so my parents took me there, and I was able to get my treatment there as well. So I did a clinical trial, right? So basically, drugs that had never been tested on humans before was my only option, and so I was fortunate. I got a couple rounds. The plan was 3 years of chemo, which was pretty standard at the time. That's kind of what yours was.
Yeah.
Right? So that was the plan. I did 2 cycles, and then I got very, very sick very quickly. And unfortunately, at the time, MD Anderson didn't have a pediatric ICU at the time. So they kind of kept me there as long as they could. And then they said, you know, she's really sick. We should send her somewhere. So I went across the street to Herman and got some treatment there and came back, and I was in the hospital for 2 months. I was really sick, and my nurses became my best friends. They became my support system, right? I had my favorite nurses. In fact, one of my favorite nurses, I actually named my hamster after her. And I found out later, I felt so horrible. The other nurses would call her the rodent because I had named So poor Miss Claire.
That's really funny.
I know. I felt bad. But anyway, I got better, which was lovely. And then, you know, my cancer was gone at that time, and the doctors kind of came together and said, hey, this chemo almost killed you, and we're just going to watch you for a while and make sure everything's okay. And so fortunately, the cancer never came back. I didn't end up having to do 3 years of treatment. And here I am. I just celebrated this summer was my 25th cancer anniversary. Woo! Cancerversary. We love it. So yeah, I knew very early on that I wanted to make something positive out of my cancer experience. I didn't want to live in fear of having had cancer. And like I said, my nurses were so important to me as well. And I really admired them. So I always knew I wanted to become a nurse, and I always knew I wanted to work at MD Anderson. And so that's what I did. I went to Baylor Nursing School. I graduated, and MD Anderson was my first job, and I loved it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Even like from such a young age, you were like, I want to turn this from like something negative to something positive.
Absolutely.
And especially like being so brave to go back to the hospital and being, I want to work there. Like I want to be what like the nurses were for me. That's amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, as you know, your nursing team, your medical team can make or break it. And so I wanted to always be that positive light at the end of the tunnel for my patients, and just show them that, here I am 15, 20 years out, and like, you can get through this, and you can make something positive of your life.
No, I remember like you sat in my bed and like told me your story. I was like, okay, well, she did it. I could do it too.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it was amazing. You guys were such a support system. You and your mom to me and my mom.
Yes.
It was amazing.
That was so unique too. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. No, it's amazing because when I looked at you, I was like, okay, like she did it. I can do it. And it was just like sort of like it gives you strength to keep on going, and like. Yeah. That's amazing. As a nurse now, like you get to see like the difficult part. Like obviously like you lived it and you went through the struggles too. But can you tell me a little bit about how it is like as a nurse to like deal with patients? Because I know like I was like I'm an okay patient, but like I had my mood swings too, and I had everything. And it's like, how do you not get affected? Or maybe you do, because some cases are like so much harder, and like you get a bad news, and like you deal with kids from like babies who can't really communicate to like teenagers who also don't communicate as
who
much.
also don't communicate very well. This is true. This is true.
So,
I think kind of the key to success is to always find your laughter, right? And that's something I found through my personal cancer journey, and something I always encourage my patients. Like, you can choose to make this the most dark, miserable, depressing time of your life, or you can choose to laugh in the face of cancer and have fun and live your life. And obviously there are tough times. Obviously not everyone survives. But I think for me personally, whenever I would lose a patient I was really close to, I would go and I would find my survivors, right? And that would give me that hope again. And so just being able to say, okay, not all of them make it, sure, but at the same time, there are some that we've made a real difference, and they're living their lives and they're doing a great job. And so I always found it such an honor and a blessing to walk such an intimate journey with these families and with these kids. It's such a profound time of your life, and to invite me into that is such an honor. And so I always love being able to sit on beds and have conversations and paint nails, or like play a video game with the guys or something like that, all the way to, sitting and holding a mom's hand as she's saying goodbye to her child. I don't take that for granted. I've always said that the moment you don't have an emotional reaction to children with cancer suffering and dying is the moment you need to walk away, right? Because you should always have that emotion. But at the end of the day, I always went back to, my survivors. And that always gave me that hope to keep going.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's amazing, because, you can like get really bad news, and then you immediately have to be like, okay, I'm the happiest face you're ever going to see, and I'm walking into your room.
Absolutely.
Like, there was not one day where a nurse came into my room with a sad face.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are really like the happiest people at the hospital, and you guys really make a difference when it comes to like treatment and pediatrics.
Yeah.
Amazing. And wow.
And I think pediatric nurses are different in that regard. I'm sure many times you walked out on us having dance parties at the nurses station. And
100%.
We're just basically a big group of teenagers out there just having a great time. And so we all get very close, right? We go through a lot. We see a lot of trauma, but we have fun with it, and really just being able to come together and say, let's just make the best of the day for our patients that we can. But always remembering that everybody's walking a different journey, and you don't know what you're walking into in that room. And so just being able to walk in with that grace to accept what that family's going through is really important.
Wow. Yeah. Besides like turning something like negative into something positive, having cancer at such a young age, like it really like sets you up like for like, it like shows you so many things, so many lessons. Can you like talk about some of the lessons that you learned? Like, even though you were young, like it's something that you remember always.
Oh, gosh,
it's something you're not gonna forget, because it was like 3 years of your life, and it's
incredibly life-changing. I don't think, and a lot of people when they're first diagnosed, I feel like they think, I just got to get through this and then I'll get back to normal life.
Oh, I definitely thought that. Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Like, this is your new normal. And so the earlier on that you can accept that and choose to just choose your path from there is great. It's difficult, right? So I grew up in a small town where everyone knew me as that cancer kid, right? Like, was just, it follows you around, right?
It really does, yeah.
I think probably the first time I realized that that didn't have to be my only identity was when I went to college. And I had a friend, and we had known each other for 6 or 8 months. And I just casually said, oh, when I had cancer, thinking she already knew, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, wait, what do you mean? And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to tell my story.
And tell it how I want it.
Yeah, I get to tell my story today. And that's just such a profound thing for me. Obviously, there's, emotional trauma and PTSD. I'm sure you struggle with that as well. That comes with being a childhood cancer survivor. Not everyone makes it, especially some of your friends. And that can be really hard to walk that journey of survivor's guilt at times.
No, yeah, that's amazing what you just said, that like everyone like looked at you as a cancer kid, because like they do. They do. And it's like part of who you are, but like as you keep growing up and like, no, now that I'm in college, like not everyone knows that I had cancer. Yeah. So it's like something that I get to share, and it's like part of my identity and who I am, but it's not all I am.
Exactly.
Sometimes like when you're in cancer, you think that's all you are and all your identity. And I think nurses actually play like, I remember you being like, this is your new normal, but like it might change. That helped a ton. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Going back to like now, as a nurse, what advice would you give to like moms, or especially teenagers or kids that are currently going through the treatment, but like don't really have just started and don't really know like how to accept that diagnosis? Because I feel like it's really traumatic to like come from living a normal life and then going back into like, oh, this is my new life. Because adjusting to your new normal is super hard. And I feel like as a nurse, you might have some input into that.
Yeah, that was some of my favorite parts, was really just walking that new diagnosis journey with families, because it's such an intimate time. It's such a difficult time. A lot's going on. I think what was unique about me is that my mom worked beside me really at the hospital. So I was able to talk to her and say, hey, this mom's having a hard time. Why don't you go talk to them? But one of the things that I always tell families when they're first starting off is, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And everybody wants it just to be a sprint. We just want to get to that finish line. We just want to be done with it, right? It's a marathon. You've got to pace yourself. You've got to know when to stop for breaks. You've got to know when to change your pace. But at the end of the day, you're surrounded by the sidelines that are here to help you. Yeah. And so just reminding them that we're here for them, to take their time, to know that everybody goes through this process differently, especially like moms versus dads. Siblings are such an important thing to remember too. They go through so much and sometimes often get neglected because the child with cancer becomes the focus. And so just reminding families to make sure that we're taking care of everybody, and that it's okay that some people are angry right now and some people are crying right now and some people are totally fine right now. We're just going to walk this journey and remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
I think you've touched on such an important subject, which is like remembering that it affects like the whole family, like especially like my family, like my brother and my sister. I know that they felt like even like somewhat neglected, because like all the focus goes into like the kid with cancer and like trying to get through. But like it's like remembering that we're all part of a journey. And like you said, like I think like nurses, doctors, and your whole family is part of your journey. Like cancer cannot be like traveled alone. No. And I think, well, I don't think I would have been able to do it without you guys as nurses, because you guys really make my day, and it was amazing. So.
We become a family, really, and that's what I tell people, is that this is my cancer family, and like, you guys become like sisters and siblings and like, my kids to me, because we travel such a traumatic journey together. Yeah. And especially, during COVID, your siblings couldn't be there, grandparents couldn't be there. And so there was just an even, I feel like, deeper bond, and it's a family. We come together.
Yeah. During COVID, it was really hard. Nobody could come in.
Nope.
It was only me and my mom, I remember. And even like my dad wanted to come sometimes, and it was like, no, you can't come.
Yeah.
But no, I remember, and my mom became friends with all the nurses. Yeah. It was amazing. And like my dad hates like cancer stuff, and like he like hates going to the hospital and like seeing me in pain. And I remember like he would come with me to the hospital, and like the nurses would distract him and like take him over here, come look at this, while like they would take blood or whatever it was in my treatment. So that was amazing. Yeah. What would be your advice overall to like someone that like is like post treatment? Like we just talked about like your advice, like during treatment, like it's a marathon, not like a sprint. But I feel like sometimes we kind of, after like we're out of the hospital and like we're moving on, like it's kind of hard like to move on from who you were to like who you're now. Like kind of what we talked about, like you stay in your town and everyone is like, oh, that's a cancer kid. How do you like find like your new identity, or how did you do it, or like how as a nurse could some advice that you would give? Because I definitely struggled with that.
Sure. And I think that's so normal. I think most cancer survivors struggle with like, how do I go forward from here, right? And I think it's really about not only finding and giving yourself some grace, to know that it's okay that you're going to bounce back into those modes where you cry that you had cancer. That's okay. I'm 25 years out and I still have moments where I'm like, why did that have to happen to me? And I've turned it into something positive, which is lovely, but I still have those moments and that's okay. But also just knowing like it's okay to live your life. It's okay to move on from this. I think especially somebody that struggles with survivor's guilt, that lost a lot of my friends, a lot of time I have felt this intense need to live for them and to do all these things because they didn't get to live, right? Yeah. And it comes to a point where it's like, you know what? I don't owe them anything. I need to live my life too, right? And one of my doctors, when I was struggling with leaving MD Anderson, he came to me and he said, "LeighAnn, you don't owe us anything. Like we don't expect repayment, you know." And I always felt this intense need of I need to give back. I need to, you know, make it a point. And so when he came to me and said, like, you can go live your life, it's okay. Yeah. That was such a breath of fresh air for me. And so I think just knowing it's always going to be a part of your life, but it doesn't have to be the sole identity of your life is important.
Yeah, I think that's like so important, because sometimes I'm like, okay, why me? Like I was chosen and then I have to do and go live this crazy life and like be this and be that because I survived and they didn't, or they're currently in treatment and I'm not. Why am I healthy? You know? And like one deals with like survivor guilt, but like what you said, it's so important. Like you don't owe anything, like letting go and not being all of you. That's amazing. And
I think a lot of times we ask ourselves, why me, God? Why did this happen to me?
Oh, 1,000%. Like I was being in bed and I'm like, why me? Yeah.
Every day. And that's okay. But I think in those moments I try to say, okay, God, why not me? Why did you choose me? Why not me? Why couldn't I be the one that does this? What do you have planned for me? And I am horrible. I sometimes just don't understand God's timing for my life. And I get very frustrated with him. But just remembering that like God's plan is better. You know? Yeah. And we might not always see it, but that light at the end of the tunnel is there.
No, I agree. Like when I got cancer, I was like, why me? Absolutely. Why is this happening? But like now that I'm out of like cancer, I still don't know God's plan for my life. And I'm never going to
We never will.
Yeah. And obviously like we get frustrated with timing and everything, but like it's amazing to see how like little by little I'm like understanding why it happened.
100%.
Like I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, now I get to do this.
Exactly.
For example, which I love to do, but it's like something that would not have happened if like had I not gotten cancer. And like with your story, what's so inspiring is that you were like, you became a nurse because of what happened, and I have no words to be like grateful for what you did for me and as a nurse. And I know you've touched like so many kids, so that's amazing.
Well, I want to say it is my honor to walk that journey with you guys, and I am so grateful to have each of you in my lives. And y'all bring us so much more as nurses than we ever give you. And like appreciation is always lovely, but truly, especially in oncology nurses, it's such an honor to walk this journey with you guys. And we take that very seriously. We take that to heart. We take it home with us, right? We take it home to our families and our loved ones. And they fall in love with you guys just as much. But it's truly an honor to walk a journey with someone that's fighting cancer.
Oh, thank you very much. No, thank you so much. To like kind of conclude, what would be like your like if you could talk to someone, sit in someone's bed again and be a nurse, because I know right now you left MD Anderson and you closed that chapter, but if you could go back and sit in someone's bed right now that's like completely struggling, like what would be like your number one advice?
You're not alone. You're not alone. I think it's such an isolating world at times, and especially for teenagers at times. You know, friends don't know what to say. Teenagers are awful at what to say. They'll say all the wrong things. And so just knowing that you're not alone, and we're going to take this one day at a time together, and you will just find your strength every moment.
That's amazing. Yeah, that you're not alone one, I think is
It's a big deal.
It's a big one.
It's a big one.
Because what you say, like your friends sometimes like it's awkward. Like
Absolutely. They don't know what
still,
to say.
like I am still like completely cancer free, but it's like you bring it up and it's like
they don't know how to feel.
I love making jokes about it and stuff, but
we do have very dark humor as cancer survivors.
we do. But I think like you're not alone, and I think that's the reason we started that, and that's why your story is so amazing, and I hope it inspires many other people, because wow, like you changing something so negative and like making positive, and not only positive in your life but positive in like everyone else's life that you've touched is amazing. So I want to remind everyone that you're not alone, as LeighAnn said, and everyone that's in your team and your family, your nurses, they're there for you. If you have someone like LeighAnn, be so grateful, because they're amazing and they're gonna make the journey a lot better. And also remember to take it one day at a time. Like she said, it's not a marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And we're here for you. If you're currently going through cancer, just remember that like we've been there and we want to support you in your journey too. So feel free to reach out, and we're always here to help at Pasos de Esperanza. And thank you so much for sharing your story, and we'll see you in the next episode.